right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on episode 159 of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. I am one of your co-hosts, Billy Bob. I am streaming from the West Coast. My other co-host is Carlo Parcelli, streaming from Washington, D.C., occupied by the National Guard and the Trump administration. I have Leo Zhao as our special guest. He's streaming live from East Berlin. And we were actually streaming for the last 23 minutes, and I realized that we were not live. And so now we're going to start over. But we had a great discussion. You guys missed it. Hopefully, we'll have an even better discussion the next 23 minutes. But I wanted to start off by, we entitled our program today, Venezuela's Oil Demands Liberation was the title of today's program. And before we got into all of the Venezuelan things, I wanted to play this small minute and 20-second clip by Mark Sloboda. And then we were just going to talk about it on the other side of the clip. But it is pretty short. So bear with me as I play that one more time. Here we go.
There's also the fact that they've come out the other side of an ideology that also, preached that needed to be spread to the rest of the world. They've been disillusioned of those ideological.
I mean, I don't know if we want to parse it sentence by sentence.
However you like.
So does I know Stalin laughed at the idea that they were going to militarily by the sword, spread their communist ideology. So I'm not sure I would even, agree with Mark's idea that, the Soviet Union was interested in seeing, in spreading their ideology. But, they definitely, and I, all communists today definitely believe that, people should overthrow the oligarchy, put in power a government that represents the people. And of course, we think that should happen everywhere. That's our ideology. You think that's a fucking ideology? I mean, it's fucking basic. Like, let's get rid of the oligarchies that are ruling in the West and their empire. And let's put in governments that care about the people. And guess what? A government that cares about their people and represents their people, those governments are going to work with other governments in peace and mutual prosperity. And this is what Russia wants. This is what China wants. And so, in that way, they are absolutely still communist. But, he doesn't understand communism how we do. He's a liberal, he's an anti-communist, and he understands communism in a different way. But let's go on and see what else
in different terms. China has moved beyond the ideological constraints of a communist system whose tatters they still clothe themselves in.
Okay. Let me go back. Let me go back and say that the international spread of communism, one way or another, by violent action, often was Trotsky and not Stalin. I mean, we can make that clear. Stalin said no, Russia must come first, the development of Russia.
Exactly. No, that's a great point, Carlo. Thank you for that. So definitely the Trotskyists were the world revolution, wanting to spread communism, through the sword. And Stalin was like, no, that's ridiculous. We're going to develop it in one country. We're going to try and have peace and prosperity. Obviously, the West wasn't going to allow them to have peace or prosperity. But, that was Stalin's intent. So what about Mark's next comment that, China has moved past the ideological constraints of communism? So I totally reject this statement because I don't think there's ideological constraints to Marxism. I think Marxism is a dogmatic ideology. It is not dogmatic. It is pragmatic, right? And so it takes whatever the material conditions are and tries to understand those material conditions, and within the constraints of the material conditions, it enacts policies designed to better the interests of the working class. Like, that's literally what Marxism is. And so to say that that's ideologically constraining, I would argue it's the opposite, right? So it's, you know, it's liberating. It's the ideology of liberation against the constraints of capitalism and about the profit motive and doing everything, you know, based on what is profitable for, you know, the rich people. So that's what's constraining. And so I argue, and I've talked with, you know, Greg Rosen a lot about this, you know, that Marxism isn't the dogmatic abolition of capitalism. It's not the dogmatic abolition of private ownership of the means of production. It's identifying what is going to work best given the material conditions that exist, and, you know, pragmatically doing those things that best improve the lives of the working class majority. So it's democratic in that way. It's the most democratic system in that way because it represents the interests of the working class masses and it attempts to further those interests. So again, I just totally reject Mark Sloboda's understanding of communism and his liberal anti-communism and his projection of his own, you know, misunderstandings onto China. Go ahead, Carlo.
He may be thinking about the Gang of Four when Mao was in decline and all of those errors. He may be thinking in terms of the Khmer Rouge. He may be thinking in terms of this fucking Boko Haram guy that's just been knocked off by Niger, whose whole movement is anti-technology. And if you want to say one thing about the Chinese,
yeah,
they're one of the, they've always been one of the most highly technologically advanced.
If you think communism is anti-technology or Marxism is anti-technology, that just makes you really stupid. And that's my point.
I mean, that may be the occurrence. That's what the what was the initiated? What was it called? The Gang of Four initiated a kind of purge of intellect. That's so anti-Confucian. That's utterly anti-Confucian.
I mean, so I would say it's anti-communist too, and the communists agreed that it's anti-communist, and that's why they got removed from power.
Well, right, that's true, but that may be what he's hearkening back to. Yeah. That might be the change he's talking about.
No,
that will be dishonest. That will be dishonest to use a failed faction within the Chinese Communist Party to characterize the entire. You know, it was a brief 10 years of ultra leftism, of infantile adventurism, ultra leftism that happened in China. It's wrong to characterize the entire Communist Party with the Gang of Four.
But let's go back a little bit to current China. I mean, it's true. To get a law passed in China through the Central Committee, first it begins at the ground roots level. People Absolutely. Are presented with the law, like on domestic violence. Recently, they wanted to initiate reforms on domestic violence. They begin on the street level with 300 people living in a block like the Cubans do, and everybody puts their input in, and they wanted to extend it beyond the violence that a man does to his wife, and they said we have to have some material in there about the younger people's violence toward older people, and they put it in. It was in the so yes, it's bottom up, and everybody gets a say. But when you come to mercantilism, that's a little different. The communist China owns the vast majority of resources and the land and all, but they've become more and more flexible over the years. It's true to letting other in their rules for what is required to have access to those materials and to that land, and that's produced a number of billionaires, quite a few billionaires, but they have no say in political decisions like they do here. where they have all the
And
space.
I mean, I would just argue that, Mark argues that flexibility with regards to economic reforms is anti-communist, and I would say no, that's communist. Like,
Well, that's
Marxism.
ideology then. Now we're down to the superficial again. Whereas people have begun their own businesses, they're thriving, and 800 million people have been pulled out of poverty.
Yeah.
Who gives
Well,
a fuck what the
well,
ideology of
well,
Marx
I mean, no,
Sloboda is?
that's very important. So, the ideological war. There's an ideological struggle to get, to mess with people's perceptions. So the West wants to indoctrinate people into thinking communism is evil and it will end up in poverty and is bad. I mean, this is what obviously the ownership class wants people to believe. So there's an ideological struggle taking place, and it's very important. The ideological struggle is the primary battlefield of the class war in the West.
It's not Marx Sloboda. It's fucking Trump and Lindsey Graham and those people that you're having the argument with.
I mean, people like Mark Sloboda, they play an important role in misleading the rebels in the West, in misleading the people who see that liberalism is collapsing, that capitalism is not tenable, that it is rife with contradictions that intensify until it breaks. There's a large amount of intelligent liberals who see this. But the role of people like Mark Sloboda and all of these, basically almost all of the, or vast majority of the YouTube talking heads on anti-imperialism belong in this camp. They routinely, constitutionally lack a scientific, rigorous understanding of the world through ownership, through class, through the rights of the working people versus the rights of the ownership people.
Why is Mark Sloboda living in Russia?
Oh, because he likes Russia. I mean, there are a number of, maybe he likes the beer. Maybe these are very complex societies, right? There are plenty of Western liberals who live in China, who love China. Like, for example, Nick Land, he lives in China and loves China, but for all the wrong reasons, right? He thinks, he would agree probably with Mark Sloboda that it is a feudal, monarchic system that is meritocratic, that is somehow magically meritocratic, and that it is a civilizational state, completely, ignoring, disregarding the Marxism, completely disregarding the other guiding principle of Chinese governance, which is Marxism.
Well, what would they like to see that would improve it?
Sorry?
What would they like to see that would improve it?
Well, okay, so Leo is just saying that there's some expats living over there, like libertarian types, and they like China because of how the system currently works, but they reject that it has anything to do with communism or Marxism, because in their minds, communism and Marxism is a very limited, constraining ideology that always ends in poverty. And as far as that's true, then that can't be what China is. China can't be Marxism because China is free and China is prosperous. So we know that communism and Marxism is not free, and it leads to poverty. So
first of all, let's get the terminology and correct. Yeah, let's get the terminology correct. The USA is a capitalist country, right? It is ruled by the ownership class. Its political system is called liberal democracy. That's what it's called, right? It's totally fraudulent, but that's what it's called. European countries, most of them, Western European countries, are social democracies, which is also a thing of the 1960s and 70s, has long since hardly fits that label anymore. But they're also capitalist countries, and China is a communist country. It's led by a communist party, and its political system is democratic centralism. And democratic centralism, as practiced by the Soviet Union, has always been bottom up, has always been workers, people making decisions through grassroots and all the way rising up to the Politburo. Um, and but the thing is, socialism in the 20th century, socialism is the path towards communism, has been constrained by imperialist attacks, by economic embargoes and sanctions, and by political isolation of empire of the USA, orchestrated by the USA, and so the material conditions demanded that these states, uh, you know, unify, and there's a there are there's a lot of material constraints on these societies. For example, North Korea, because of the extreme onslaught that they have experienced from empire, they've had some difficult times. They've had to rebuild from rubble. Like 1 in 5 North Koreans were killed by U.S. America. I'm not going to go on about the war, but this created a certain material reality in North Korea, which necessitated the state to choose professions for people. Now, it is true, when people graduate, I'm not sure if it's still true, um, but for a long time in North Korea, you graduate high school, you will be assigned according to your abilities and your talents to a sector, to a working sector. Now, features like this are not typical of communism. Features like this are entirely shaped by material necessities and circumstance created by the Cold War. So, China today has largely overcome a lot of these material conditions placed on it by the hostile, much
Yeah.
used to be much more powerful states, bourgeois states of the West. So
Yeah.
China, yeah.
Well, I had a very a thought that I really wanted to just make. So, like exactly like you're saying, China pursued a policy of self-sufficiency. This wasn't a policy dictated by communist ideology. This was a policy dictated by the material conditions, namely the Western trade embargo and the Sino-Soviet split. The Western trade embargo and Sino-Soviet split forced China into an economy of self-sufficiency. But idiots like Mark Sloboda think that they chose that out of ideological, proclivity, right? They had an ideological affinity for self-sufficiency, and so and that's what communism is. Communism is when you're self-sufficient and you don't do any trading with your neighbors, right? Like, so they think that no, North Korea is the real communist because they don't trade, right? They're a little hermit country without any economic ties to anywhere else. That's communism. How fucking stupid is that? It's fucking dumb. Like these are policies that are forced on these countries by imperialism, and in the case of China, it was the Sino-Soviet split and then the Western trade embargo. So that forced them into self-sufficiency. It's not like they were ideologically predisposed to having this economy of self-sufficiency. But anyway, this is liberals. They're stupid.
I'll grant you that.
Their stupidity is based on their material conditions, right? These are people that were born into a refrigerator, indoor plumbing, indoor toilets. When you want medicine,
and a constant cradle
you can
to
go to
grave
the pharmacy.
indoctrination designed to confuse them about how reality, what reality is.
Yeah, absolutely. People from the post-colonial states, the post-colonized regions of the world, have an entirely different experience of reality. I mean, and they understand imperialism, where the people living in the imperial core do not understand sanctions, how sanctions work. When people in Cuba cannot get medicine because of sanctions, and they have to make other decisions of how to get that. They have to structure their society in a different way because of these constraints put onto it by imperialism. And we see China overcoming those constraints and the wonders that the state can do.
I don't
Absolutely.
know. I don't know how we got into a referendum on Sloboda's ideology, but what about Deng Xiaoping? Huh? To grow rich is glorious.
What about absolutely? He's a Marxist.
Is that not true?
He's a.
I
No,
mean, is
it's not
socialism
true.
poverty or is
To grow
socialism?
rich is not. No, it's not glorious.
Okay, so let's
Because,
continue.
because my understanding of growing rich is it's everybody else's expense at which you grow rich. Now let's face it.
Right, that's your
Most-
experience. Exactly, that's your
But
experience.
the most no,
living
but that's
in a
not what I'm
capitalist
talking
country.
about. Most people in China are not rich. They've got what they need. It goes back to the quote that I can't even paraphrase, but it's the people's needs that have to be addressed. And once those needs are addressed, then you have to look at the situation. And to raise the people out of
I don't
poverty
know
in China
what
was to
position
address
you're
their
actually.
needs.
What's your position?
What's that?
What's your position? I mean, what do you
my
disagree with
position is-
China's policies? You disagree with Dan?
My position is, look, I live in this fucking country. I live in my state was just declared the wealthiest state in the United States. Okay? That's because I live right outside of Washington, D.C. currently. About a mile and a half from the northeast D.C. line.
So you're affirming Leo's statement.
Property values have gone insane. Absolutely insane. Most people can't live here. That's what I'm talking about. That's what Deng Xiaoping was ignoring. To grow rich. No. He doesn't. Maybe the translation of the word is wrong, but that doesn't belong in my lexicon, motherfuckers.
I don't think you've read enough Deng Xiaoping.
Not rich. I
don't think you've read enough Deng Xiaoping. I don't think you have read enough Deng Xiaoping because he says a million. He says a million other things which are I mean that's just a soundbite.
But I did watch what he initiated.
Yeah,
he initiated a lot of change within the way the economic system.
Right, that soundbite was uttered in the context of initiating those changes, and we can talk about those changes. Those changes are absolutely a part of a socialist construction. It is what Lenin theorized, 80 years ago, 100 years ago.
But the hark back is part of Confucius, too. It's a huge part of Confucius.
Sure.
So, I mean,
part of it also.
I think Deng was absolutely correct.
Was Confucius a communist? No, of course not. He believed in the emperor. If it was a good emperor, they could help people from the bottom up. Yes, of course, you had the Warring States period. You had famine. You had all kinds of problems over the 2,500 years of the existence. But it's like I have to point out every fucking time. It's when Confucius is mentioned, read Li Bo. Read Ezra Pound's translation of Li Bo called The Exile's Letter, and you will get all the flavor you need of what goes on in Chinese culture, from the Communist Party all the way down to the merest laborer, wherever you want to point out. You'll understand Chinese society. It's not strictly a communist. I mean, you guys are too doctrinaire for me. I don't understand why you have to be so doctrinaire when people are eating. Fuck.
People are eating because of the doctrine of Marxism. People are eating primarily, not because of Confucianism. The Qing dynasty was Confucianist. The Qing dynasty saw mass starvation of Chinese people, saw the domination of Chinese people by colonial forces. So it is not just Confucianism what China is doing today, the wonders
Yeah.
that the state is able, the epic, world historic tasks that it has successfully accomplished
If you
is
go to
not only due
Wikipedia,
to Confucianism, is not only due to common sense. Well, in a way it is, but Marxism is common sense. It is
yeah,
Yeah,
common sense
but it's
scientifically distilled
yes.
into.
Common sense means you adapt. You adapt. You have to
yeah.
And
prevent
that's what
it
Marxism
adapted.
does. And that's what
So if
Marxism
you
does.
go
Is
if you go to
it adapt.
Wikipedia, if you go to Wikipedia right now, Wikipedia will tell you that China endured a famine a year for the previous 2,000 years on record. There are
Every 10
recorded
years or
famines
so.
every year for the 2,000 years prior
Yes,
to
but they
the
were
Communist
local
Party.
famines. God damn it, they were
Every every
localized.
every 10
Jesus
years or so.
Christ.
Yeah.
No, no.
They're
Wikipedia
local.
says there was a
And so it was
recorded famine
Every year.
averaging
it
a
grew and it
year
shrank. It grew and it
Yeah,
for the
shrank.
previous
in
You
different
had the
parts.
2,000
Mongols
years
invasion. Blah
before
blah blah. Of
um,
course, there was famine.
the communists. So that was what? Under what? Under Confucianism, right? Confucianism, did
It was
Confucianism end the
under the
famine?
emperors, depending on the emperors.
Yeah. Well,
Who
Marxism definitely did. Within 10 years, famine was completely and forever eradicated from famine. But anyway, okay, look,
But it had to be
I wanted
unified
to,
first.
I didn't get closure on the discussion about Dang's comment, and I mean, we can just move on. But I was trying to figure out exactly what your point was. I mean, obviously, are you on the side of the Gang of Four that didn't want to liberalize the economy and didn't want to allow a measure of private ownership that has resulted in billionaires? I mean, to me, that was a good decision to make. It was a good
Yes,
decision.
part of it is yes, I'm in agreement with them. I'll tell you why, but you won't want to hear it because nobody does. Because what's fateful about the advances in all technology is that it's destroying the world. And it has no way out because it's based on systems of quantification that have its roots in Western, well, actually, you can go back to Muslim uh, uh, um, uh, mathematical thought.
Yeah.
That is, you have to quantify everything you talk about. If you talk about a proton, you can't talk about a proton as if it's an individual thing. A proton has 7 properties, and it's supposedly all of them do. And if they have those properties, it's a proton. I've never thought I never imagined thought more insular than that. That is so
Okay.
insular that it doesn't describe anything. So material well-being ultimately is a set of properties that it and to advance anything technology, you have to reduce everything to quantified matter. It also has to be mathematized. It has to be there has to be quantification. If you study anything about quantum theory, you'll understand that all the quantum paradoxes were never solved. They didn't fucking give a damn. I talked to you about Niels Bohr, Billy Bob, months ago or years ago, and you
Yeah.
didn't know who he was. The
Yeah.
Copenhagen interpretation. I bet you don't know what that is. You don't understand that the end of the world is couched in these medium this medium of improvement of people's lives, which I'm not against. If they're going to live their lives, they're already here. They might as well have some peace. They might as well have some well-being. But the thing is, it's ultimately going to destroy the world because
Yeah.
there's no Western technology that is not geared to destroying the complexity, the variability of nature. Period. It's not
Okay.
there. It's
So
too
yeah, no, that
stupid.
sounds like you have certainty. You have a nihilistic certainty that technology has
It's
put
not
us on a path.
nihilistic. You have AI. Now you have global climate change, and you have nuclear weapons. You're gonna call me a nihilist? Those
The
things
price
exist.
of
How
solar
moronic
panels.
is that to call me a nihilist
The
Okay.
when
price
I'm
of
just living in the world? I don't
Carlo, stop for a second. The price of
know.
the price of solar panels has halved in the last few years because of Chinese technology, and even a rabid China hater publication like ABC of Australia Australian Broadcasting or whatever, published a big article about China is saving the world.
Yes, but
Global
that's not,
emissions has come
nobody
into
believes, nobody understands what I'm trying to say. That's the
global.
problem.
Okay,
That's
so
the
we're gonna move
problem.
on.
The
We heard
underlying,
you.
listen, solar panels use tons of toxic material. And
Yes,
when they have to
but
be
at some
abandoned,
point, the benefits outweigh
but yes,
cost.
temporarily.
No,
Temporarily.
Okay.
no, not temporarily. It will
Yes,
become
I
even
don't
more
know
so.
why
temporarily.
Carlo argues
It
that
will
he's not a
become even
nihilist.
more.
I
And
think you're
when you
trying to
discard
get him to
when you
agree with him
discard
that
those
everything is
things,
going to be
it also
destroyed
puts
soon.
toxic
And if that's not nihilism, I don't know
chemicals
what
back in
nihilism
them.
is. But I do want to move on. I want to continue with Mark's thing. I'm having an interest. I mean, this is great. We're having a heated discussion. But Carlo, I mean, we get it.
No.
You're certain that we're on a path to destruction we can't avoid. And so,
No, you
fine, we'll
can't
see.
avoid it. If you're going to use Western principles of development, you can't avoid it, which
But
might
China
be
is not
another.
using Western principles
You
of
are
development.
using Western principles. You're using Newton and Leibniz, for Christ's sake.
They're
What
using
could be
what?
more Western than that?
They're using what?
That's what Chinese technological advances are based on. They're based on Newton and Leibniz and the calculus. All of it.
Wait,
Mathematics.
the
Everything but
reason,
the
hold
thing.
on, let's get something straight. The only reason technology is harmful is because of capitalism, is because it is controlled by a elite of
No.
property owners. And so technology is used for, first of all, which technologies are developed? The only technologies out of the entire range of possibilities, of possible technologies to be developed, are the ones that make short-term profit. These are the only kinds of technology that capitalist countries
That's
produce.
just-
And then how these technologies are used is strictly for profit. But
That's
China
just-
is using technology in a
That's
different
just the
way.
shallowness of your thinking.
In a different
about
way.
it. I'm thinking about it at a whole different level, far deeper than apparently we can discuss it here, or I can discuss it anywhere. Apparently, as I sit in my impoverished environs, with the fucking National Guard on the fucking streets. You don't understand what I'm talking about.
That's fair.
I don't
No, I
want to
don't.
hear it. You haven't done the reading I've done.
Yeah, we don't
You
get it.
haven't run. You
What
haven't
we
read.
get-
You haven't
Carlo.
read Husserl.
I'm gonna
You haven't
mute
read
Carlo.
Heidegger. You
Carlo.
haven't read Kant. You haven't.
Carlo, what we get is that you've convinced yourself that we're on a path towards destruction. So I mean, you don't need to. I don't. We don't share your belief, but I mean, I don't know why you say it's not nihilistic. I mean, because to me, that's what nihilism is. But so I want to move on. I want to go back to this.
You shouldn't have muted me. That's wrong. That's so anti-communist.
Okay. So I want to go back to this thing and hear what Mark was saying. We were getting through this slowly.
Sloboda would say that's communism.
In reality, it's not there, right? China is only it only has the tatters of a communist state. It is not. It is a realist based nationalist Chinese state that is
okay. So a realist base. So again, Mark is suggesting that Marxism and realism are like opposite ends of the spectrum. But I would argue that Marx's liberalism is on the opposite end of the spectrum as realism, and realism is synonymous with Marxism. That reality has a Marxist bias, right? So that's the argument of actual communists that aren't liberals and who actually, ought to be able to define what communism is. Like, if the Communist Party of China is 100 million strong and has lifted the poorest country into the most prosperous country, doesn't get to define what communism is. Like, I mean, I think they have the right. I think they have the right to define what communism is. And I think that liberals, ought to just shut the fuck up because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But any thoughts on the idea that that Mark is presenting here, that China is not communist, that they're realist and nationalist?
China is both. I mean, China is realist and communist. I mean, We've defined the terms earlier. People of both of these camps, of either one of these camps, that China is a civilizational state, civilizational capitalist state, China is a socialist state, um, routinely ignore the other component. Both of these are important core concepts or guiding principles in Chinese governance. Confucianism, absolutely, but Marxism, absolutely, and the two are compatible. So,
Okay,
I mean,
he continues talking about the DNA, the Chinese DNA.
More than anything, at the end of the day, if we have to talk in moral terms, driven by ancient.
If we have to talk in moral terms, so again, you can tell in Marx's head, that communism is immoral, and when he brings up communism, he is talking about immorality. This is obvious from Mark's small brain here. So Mark is saying that I'm bringing up communism, and when I bring up communism, I'm talking about immorality. And now that we're talking in moral terms, right? That's what he's saying. So now that we're talking in moral terms,
Chinese civilizational Confucian values, because it's written into their DNA, and to a certain extent, it always was.
So I don't know. Is he done yet? Is that the end of it?
Yeah, that is not the way we experience the world.
Yeah. That's the
I mean, I can tell
yeah,
you.
that's it.
So
Yeah, he's just brain damage from like all Western liberals.
Yeah.
Brain damage from generations of anti-communist bullshit that is funded by billions and billions of dollars.
yeah, and so like you said, either in this episode or before we were thinking we were broadcasting live, is that the anti-communism is just ingrained in people at a very young age. And so all of our favorite and all of the best alternative analysts that we enjoy, Jeffrey Sachs, John Mearsheimer, Scott Ritter, Mark Sloboda, et al., they're all infected with this anti-communist liberal perspective. And so we kind of just have to deal with it as we watch, their analysis, which we appreciate on many topics, on Israel, on Russia, on Ukraine. But, again, I want people to have things 100% correct. And so I get triggered. I get triggered when I hear Mark, spewing this ignorant liberal diarrhea and refusing to concede the tremendous, positive results that communism and Marxism has had for China, and wanting to, negate everything that Marxism has accomplished, and then, contribute those successes to Confucianism, which, like you say, Leo, is a part of the material conditions that have shaped China. Because Confucian, like Taoism, you were explaining, has been a school of thought that has existed in China for thousands of years. So it can't help but to, play a role in modern China. But, again, if you look at what happened in 1949 when the Communist Party took power, started applying Marxism to the material conditions of China, that's when China started to do things, much better. And so to credit that to a 2,000-year-old, Confucianism instead of to, the application of Marxism, to the conditions of China, it's really, it incenses me and it stimulates my brain and it makes me want to discuss it and rant about it. And so that's what we've been doing. And I do kind of feel bad for muting Carlo, but sometimes like I want to, I just feel like we're not going to get anywhere if we don't, focus and be disciplined about our discussion.
You think I'm going to move my position? I'm on my deathbed. I'm 77 years old. I have cancer. Fuck that. Listen, you guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about when it comes to technology. And don't mute me. Because when you talk about Confucianism, and you have to talk about the rule of an emperor, sure. You also have to talk about a country that was not a country at the time. It was divided. It got larger, it got smaller. It was invaded by all kinds of different parties. The British moved in and You had the Opium Wars and so on and so forth, and it was, the Ming Dynasty. It was it was basically trashed by the West. But the point I'm trying to make here about the technology is the technology is Western based. It had its ultimate.
No, it's not.
Well, listen.
All technology is not Western based.
Yes, it is.
No,
Listen,
it's not. No, it's not.
yeah, the technology we use is Western based. I mean, you can take it back.
Okay,
I mean, I've
okay,
had people argue
okay.
what you're saying is going all the way back to the Greeks and before. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the accelerated West. Listen, the confluence of Western technological thought and mathematical thought and the age of imperialism totally conflate. 1500.
Yeah, what is their relationship?
What is their relationship? As the technology rose, imperialism rose.
That is true.
Okay, now what's the basis of technology? What makes the technology able to advance? It's arithmetization. It's ability to see everything quantized. That is everything. So you can let's go to CERN and the boson, the large boson generator in CERN. Okay?
Why is it automatically necessarily destructive?
Because when you go to find the missing particle in special relativity or general relativity, for example, gravity, to find gravity, you can find that particle in CERN with the high energy system if you use as a guiding principle the definition of what that particle will be are the 7 properties that you assign it through quantification and mathematization. That rules out any kind of more complex system of particles. Maybe it's an infinite variable of particles, and you're only looking for the 7 properties, and that's what's going on. That's why we spend billions and billions of dollars developing all this crap, because the fact of the matter is CERN can only use its 7 properties for the Higgs boson because it doesn't respond 80% of the time to anomalies within those supposed Higgs bosons. So you have a 1 out of 5 problem with defining a Higgs boson. So you haven't defined a Higgs boson because you don't know what the fuck it is.
So
and that's
Leo,
what's wrong with
that's
modern
why I'm
technology.
not interested in this
and that's
discussion,
why I agree with any group, even though they don't know anything about this, that wants to do away with modern technology because it's going to do away with them.
Okay, so we all have our opinions, and I get
I'm alone in this one.
I don't have agreement. I have optimism that as our society progresses, as the human civilization progresses, that we'll overcome some of these shortcomings and we can do better, right? We can harness technology in better ways. We can address climate change. We can address poisoning the planet. And that's my hope, and I'm optimistic. And I know the primary obstacle are the capitalists, the one that don't care about that only care about their short-term profit. And China represents the antithesis to that. China is reforesting their deserts. They are, using renewable, clean energy resources more than any other country. They're the leading manufacturer, the leading user of these technologies. So I have optimism that going forward, we're not all just going to kill ourselves. But if you're right, and we are, well, I'm still not wasting my time, trying to advocate for improvement. That's still a good use of my time, even if we're all going to inevitably die, which of course we all individually will die, in a few decades. But so I mean, I know that you are have certainty in your understanding, and I don't really want to have an argument about that, because like you said,
we
don't understand
it. You're just not equipped to have it. Forget
it. Exactly.
Okay.
No, and it's total agreement. And because of that, that's why I want to just talk about things that I'm more equipped to discuss. So, so we can talk about the title of our program. So we got sidetracked because I wanted to rant and vent about Mark Sloboda and all the liberal anti-communists that I guess I would all honestly say we're blessed. Like, we're blessed to have, because compared to the establishment press, the alternative analysts, the analysts in the alternative media are infinitely superior. I just wish they weren't all idiot liberals that have an ideological ignorance and an anti-communist bias. I wish that weren't the case, but it is. And so, but I do it does get me angry, and I do like to rant about it. Having ranted about it, I'm ready to move on.
Wait,
What's
I
going
just
on
want
in
to say one
Venezuela?
more thing.
Go ahead.
I did touch upon this last episode when I mentioned that that's their epistemology. And is it really good to have all of these experts on these shows who have been in the intelligence, have been in the military, have done these things, because that's their epistemology. That's how they can know the world. They can't know the world the way I know it. That's how they can know the world. Do I want to be moved? Do I want to be influenced by people that can only understand the world in the way they understand it? And ultimately I have to say no, but I will listen to what they have to say for the details they bring out while we're still here on the planet.
Yeah, no, and then Todd makes that same case. It's like what ends up happening is these people become ideological gatekeepers, and then all the millions of people that are watching them, become indoctrinated with the same liberal ignorance, and so that is the problem, and that's exactly why we're speaking out now. Todd also makes another good point. Why just give Confucianism credit when China's also been a Buddhist society for thousands of years as well. And this just goes to show that it's this dishonest effort to take the success that is deserved by Marxism and try and give it to an arbitrary school of thought like Confucianism instead of Buddhism, instead of Taoism, or instead of communism. It's just anti-communism is what it is. But let's talk about Venezuela.
Well, I want to say one other
Go
thing.
ahead.
Is it? Listen, Peter Dale Scott and I used to have a ready. He wrote a lot about Central America and cocaine smuggling. He's also a poet and historian of other things, and we had exchanges for about 10 years, and we had a falling out over Tibet, and I was against the feudal nature of reestablishing a Buddhist authority in Tibet. And I finally found out that his wife is writing, or she was attempting to write at the time, a biography of the Dalai Lama. And so you even have Peter Dale Scott. I mean, I don't know if it's personal with him and his wife or not, who's fooled by this charlatan, this feudal charlatan called the Dalai Lama, who those people brutalize their people, the regular people, not non monks, in their care. It was serfdom. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And you have to salute the Chinese for taking care of that situation, the same way they took care of the Uyghurs. Or
now,
the Russians.
We had Peter on our old program, Foreign Policy Review, Carlo, and he was a really nice guy to come and join us. And of course, widely respected, widely renowned, and he was one of the precursors of today's analysts, right? So he was the same thing as we have today. He typifies the same thing that I was complaining about, where it's you have this ideological shortcoming. You're anti-communist. You oppose actual existing socialism, like the Soviet Union, like China. But you're saying you have really good criticisms of imperialism, and so it's tough to, that's the best we have out there is a good solid criticism of imperialism, but without we want to have that without the anti-communism and all of the best. Go ahead.
Can I say something about the roots of Western political nihilism? This idea
at our peril, I guess.
this absolute cynicism, cynicism that drives Western political outlooks. This is rooted in the French Revolution, the overthrowing of the feudal system in Europe. Carlo is absolutely correct. Feudalism was brutal all over the world. Tibet was a especially heinous example of it, but India, the caste system, European feudalism, absolutely heinous. But this feudalism was overthrown in France, and it promised to usher in a new era of equality, community, and liberty, right? That's liberalism. But what it did was replace the feudal ruling class with the bourgeoisie, with the ownership class as a elite minority ruling class. And so, as slavery existed, while the liberals ruled the world, established capitalism to replace the old feudal system. And the experience of most people was not liberation. The experience of most people was not equality, freedom, and community. The experience of the vast majority of people was the same oppression. And so this idea of new rule, new king, the same as the old king, or the new system, same as the old system, that's where it's from. It's from the liberal French Revolution, which purported to change the world, but didn't really, fundamentally failed to liberate the vast majority of people. And so this nihilism absolutely is deeply ingrained in Western political consciousness for this reason.
Well, one thing is the British, they developed or formed up the caste system in India to their own benefit. They're the people, Risley and.
But it existed before the British arrived.
No, the caste system was dramatically solidified under the British.
To what extent we can argue, but feudalism is absolute. I mean, the caste system is much older than colonialism. But okay, yes, the British did use it, of course.
Oh, they took advantage of it.
Of course.
So, imperialism. So British imperialism was the global hegemon for a while, and then World War II kind of ended the global hegemony of British imperialism, and the throne was transferred to Washington, D.C. And following World War II, the United States became the global hegemon and the sole imperialist power. Of course, you had the Free Soviet Union that was that conflict was the Cold War. But we see, I mean, we're following history. Ultimately, the Soviet Union was defeated, and we can talk about how it was defeated. But part of that defeat again resulted in the rise of China, and now you have a Western imperialist order trying to maintain its global hegemony against the the strong powers of Russia, China, Iran. And guess what? In the Southern Hemisphere, there's one country that has probably the most, or at least one of the most proven oil reserves in the world, which is the country of Venezuela. So Venezuela used to be very similar to how Cuba was under Batista. And the people in Venezuela were really disgusted and angry with how the oligarchs that ran that country and that were great friends with the imperialists in the United States, allowed all of the country's wealth and resources to leave the country and benefit Western corporations, and also, a minority of these ultra wealthy Venezuelan elites who were, of course, the puppet government in that country. And so what happened was there was a revolution. There was, they call it the Bolivarian Revolution, led by Chavez. And he mobilized the masses, and they took power through the electoral system. And for people that say that's impossible, Venezuela is the proof that it's not impossible. It's obviously very difficult. It's probably impossible in the United States, but in some countries, it is possible to use the electoral system to take power. So great credit to Chavez. Now, what happened? Chavez took power electorally, and immediately they tried to do a coup, a military coup against Chavez and get him out of power and bring back the old oligarchs. Well, what happened? It was a failed coup, and I recommend everyone to watch this amazing documentary on this coup by some Irish documentarians that happened to be there to interview Chavez during these days and weeks. And it's just a tremendous, you can watch it for free on the internet. It's called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. So if you Google The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, just an amazing documentary about that coup. And you can see the people just so horrified that, Chavez was overthrown. And I mean, they were beside themselves. But luckily, Chavez was keen enough to make sure that he had loyalty from the military, because Chavez came from the military and he had the military's backing. And so ultimately, thanks to the military supporting, him controlling the military, unlike what happened in Bolivia recently with Morales, the military ultimately was able to reverse the coup, bring Chavez back in power. So what did the West do? Well, they gave him, they hit him with the cancer rays, and they gave him this really bad cancer. But luckily, we have a great successor, Nicolas Maduro. He was a bus driver, a union bus driver from lowly upbringing. He is the current head of state in Venezuela. He won an election recently by 56%. Of course, the West, they're just, they're full of lies, but they allege that Maduro rigged the election to win by 56%. And so that's their story. And then their other story is that Venezuela is responsible for just shipping drugs into the United States, when everybody fucking knows that that's the CIA with their friendly drug cartels doing that. Like, that's obvious. But they're using, just like in Syria with ISIS, ISIS was our terrorists that we funded, armed, trained, and led with our, intelligence and our satellites. We pretend that was our pretext for destroying Syria. And now it looks as though, we're going to use the pretext of our own narco traffickers to destabilize and invade and cause poverty and misery in Venezuela. So, I mean, that's the context. And again, the other context is Venezuela has the most proven oil reserves of probably any country on earth, except for maybe Saudi Arabia. So, people should not be fooled. I can't imagine that anybody that pays attention believes what the media says about Venezuela, the government's claims. But do you guys have anything to add about any of that? Because I've kind of run out of things to say.
Well, it's incredibly hopeful or nice to hear that Russia and China are stepping up their support of Venezuelan sovereignty. The deployment of not actual troops, but there's a number of quite a bit of weapons that is coming from Russia, to Venezuela, drones, and China is stepping up economic assistance or cooperation with Venezuela, and also stepping up its logistical intelligence and military support as well.
And Maduro mobilized 4.5 million militias, right? Citizen militias. He's been mobilizing people. He says it was a big success. So of course, right now it's posturing. The U.S. hasn't really done anything. It sent warships to the border. It's talking about legalizing, doing the legal gymnastics required to start actually attacking the narco traffickers, right? And also they put a $50 million bounty on Nicolas Maduro's head, because, their narrative that they're spinning for everybody is that Maduro is an illegitimate leader. And for a while they were saying Juan Guaido was the actual leader. And now I think they might have a different person that they're saying is the legitimate leader, but it's their cronies, right? It's these wealthy elites who have sold out the Venezuelan people, and the Venezuelan people want nothing to do with them. By and large, at least a majority of Venezuelans. And so, So yeah, you've got this attack, and Venezuela is taking measures like mobilizing these militias, getting them to sign up, and we're going to see exactly what kind of provocations the United States is going to be doing in the weeks to come. I wonder what their plans are, and I've long worried that this whole pivot to like a stronghold, Fortress USA, right? Fortress America was kind of Trump's thing. We're going to trash the transatlantic alliance. We're going to focus on our own region, and we're going to double down on our imperialism. But we're going to focus on taking Greenland, taking Canada, taking the oil from Venezuela, and things in our own hemisphere, as opposed to this transatlantic alliance where we combine forces with Europe, and we oppose Russia. It seems that there's a change of tactics.
And did you see that? I saw something about Trump is changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War, in typical fashion of being honest about reverting.
Thank you, Trump, for your honesty.
Absolutely, reverting to classic, good old days colonialism.
The Chinese have a big stake in this, because just take it back to what happened recently with the Panama Canal. Now Trump lied about that. Now China did have 2 ports on either side of the Panama Canal, but Trump, the U.S. did not take those ports, as Trump said, the lying cocksucker. But what they did, BlackRock and a consortium of other international corporations bought those ports from China. Now, China imports, in fact, I think it's the largest import, I may be wrong about this, crude oil from Venezuela. And that's the connection that's central here. This is not only a move against Venezuela, but a move against China. And there's some other historical things we could point out now. The Marines, there's 4,000 Marines supposedly on these 3 destroyers. Now, the Marines have invaded Central America beaucoup times, in South America. I mean, they invaded Nicaragua 14 times before 1931 or something like that. And so they've got a long history of doing that. Now, how they would do that, they've got a little bit of a problem with their drug smuggling, the CIA, because this guy Gustavo Preto, the left-winger, left centrist, or whatever you want to call him, was elected president in Colombia, and he's taken on some of the drug cartels, and obviously cutting into the CIA's free passage through Colombia. Now those drug cartels that Maduro is helpless to do anything about are passing through some of southern Venezuela. It's a big country. It's jungle down there, and the cartels control it. But they are connected to the CIA. As I posted when I found out that Sean, what was his last name? Sean. Oh man, I want to say Paul, but that's not it. He published this book on Fort Bragg, where many instances of drug smuggling have occurred, and there have been many unsolved murders, and so these drugs have come through Hampstead Air Force Base and all these U.S. bases for years, part of the Phoenix program. Another anecdote: my wife and I were at a children's birthday party. The kid was turning 8. We're sitting there. This guy that had done a couple of tours in Vietnam came up to us and said, we had a TV show at the time. He said, keep on doing what you're doing on your TV show. You're absolutely right about what you say about the Defense Department and the CIA and the Phoenix program smuggling drugs in the Golden Triangle, because I was part of it. And it's all in Alfred McCoy's 2 great books, Politics of Error in Southeast Asia and the revised version, where he talks about Afghanistan.
Remember that one former LAPD guy? What was his name? He was the whistleblower on the CIA smuggling drugs.
Gary Webb.
Maybe he killed himself.
Yeah, he shot himself in the head twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Only instance of that. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
they
Was that
murdered
his name?
him. They murdered Maduro. I mean,
So
excuse
you
me,
mentioned that he
Chavez.
was LAPD, and that's not correct. He
No,
was
he
he
wasn't
was
LAPD. He
San
was a
Jose
journalist.
Mercury News. He was a journalist.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So I'm talking about someone else. This guy
Okay.
was former LAPD, and he openly, at the UN, I think, presented a case for the CIA smuggling drugs. Now, here is where ideology becomes centrally important, all important, because we are living in an age where facts don't matter. People can write meticulously documented, sourced books on the CIA destroying democracies all over the world, smuggling drugs, all of these things. But the ideology of liberalism that is in people's heads completely outweighs all of the facts, all of the mountains of verifiable facts. People continue to believe in American democracy, Western protection of freedoms, because only of liberalism, of ideology.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, liberalism it's the ideology of the bourgeoisie. It's the ideology that allows them to maintain their system. And so and it opposes it's liberalism is in opposition to democracy, and democracy is the ideology of socialism. So I mean, it's so this is the ideological perspective of Marxism. And so if you understand the ideological perspective of Marxism, it says certain things, right? It says there's a class divide. People are naturally divided by their class interests. And then there's a struggle. There's a struggle between the classes to control the government and to decide, what the policies are going to be. And the minority wealthy ownership class, part of their strategies of maintaining power is to ideologically indoctrinate everybody into thinking stupid stuff. That's what liberalism is. And then it's a confusing, nonsensical ideology that they can always exploit. So they pretend that they care about individual rights, and the individual is important, and they pretend to care about freedom, human rights, democracy. But all of those things in reality are subordinate to the interests of the oligarchy. And that's what we see all the time. Like, they're doing a genocide right now. So are they really liberal, or are they really an oligarchy? Well, their actions prove that their liberalness is a ploy. It's a sham. They don't really believe in human rights. They don't really believe in democracy, because they overthrow democracies all the time when it benefits their oligarchic interests. They commit genocides when committing genocide benefits their oligarchy. They don't think twice. So they're not liberal. Liberalism is just an ideological smokescreen meant to demonize socialism on the one hand, and then facilitate their own pursuit of their own oligarchic interests. So that's the role that liberalism plays, and
Yeah.
it's ignorance.
Why exaggerate liberalism when you have Trump in office? The people that elected Trump don't believe in human rights at all.
Trump is a liberal.
Yeah.
Trump is not a liberal.
Trump is a liberal. He believes in the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty, that represents liberalism, not blue-haired feminists from California.
No, no, no. He
The
doesn't
common
believe it.
usage,
He's not a liberal.
the common usage,
How would
the
you? Why
common
would we even
usage
label these
of
people like
the
that?
common usage,
How myopic is that?
the common
You're
usage
not going to
of
change anything doing that. That's
the common
nonsense.
usage of liberal and conservative is completely false
Yeah.
in the
We have a
USA, in
different
the Western
understanding, Carlo,
Hemisphere.
and I'm trying to
A
explain
liberal,
our
uh,
understanding of liberalism.
can I just define it real fast? A liberal
Trump is the
is
most
someone a liberal
racist
is
person I
someone
can
who
imagine.
believes that freedom, equality, and community is accessible by all members of society, while the 1% controls the state and owns all industry. A liberal, in the political definition, in the precise definition, the scientific definition, is anyone who stands with the Statue of Liberty. Trump stands with the Statue of Liberty. Trump believes that we can have freedom for everyone while an extreme minority runs the state and owns all industry. So, in the classic political scientific sense, Trump is a liberal. He's a conservative liberal versus the socially progressive liberals in California. So, I mean, this is the
I don't know what you're
scientific
talking
correct.
about.
No,
He's
we're,
not.
that's
I
fine.
mean, in any sense of the word, I understand liberal. He's not.
Well, yeah, you
Right.
don't understand. You don't understand
I
the
mean, I'm
word.
going back to the Phil Oakes
You
song.
don't understand the word in a scientific
Love
way.
me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal.
Yeah, you don't
I'm
understand
all
it.
for equality till they move
Exactly.
next
You
door.
don't understand liberalism in the classic, in the
Yeah.
scientific
You don't understand racism.
definition.
You don't understand bigotry. I mean, why do you think they're targeting all these little brown people? Jesus.
You're talking to a
fucking
brown
Christ.
person.
I've never heard
You're saying
something
that I don't
so
understand
absurd.
racism.
I've never heard something so absurd.
I've been dehumanized for the shape of my eyes my entire adult life. Thank you very much. I understand racism.
Yeah, sure you do. And you better hope you don't go to Miami. Because all the
So, yeah, I
Trumpers will
mean,
beat your ass up.
you know,
Okay,
you
anyway,
can't.
whatever.
What liberal?
There's different
Trump a liberal.
understandings of the
Give
term
me a
liberalism.
break.
There's the term, the way it's understood in the establishment press, right? Liberals are the Democrats. They drive Priuses and they shop at Starbucks. So those are liberals. They have blue hairs. They're feminists.
Those are cliches.
And then there's conservatives. So
They
what we're
ask
we're
people
talking
5
about.
questions about containing those things, and they don't do 3 out of 5 of them. You can't reduce human beings to that anymore. You could reduce nature to numbers.
Yo, look, liberalism is the Statue of Liberty, which was
So,
The
gifted
Statue
from
of
France.
Liberty is bullshit.
Yeah,
when
it
it comes
is
to anything
bullshit. It is
contemporary.
bullshit. It is bullshit.
Where did it come
Whoever
from?
believes in the Statue of Liberty, whoever says that America is free and democratic and protects democratic freedoms around the world
Yeah.
is a liberal.
That
Is
wasn't
a
the
liberal
original intention
in the
of
classic, in the scientific sense.
it. You're just
Now,
putting your own definition on
Donald Trump, and
somebody
all of the
else's own definition.
conservatives, all of the
And we're
Filing
conservatives.
definition.
Arlo, everybody has their own definition. We're here discussing our definitions. We
Why
have
There is a
define
scientific
Statue of
definition.
Liberty?
and you have a different understanding. But we're not
No.
wrong, just like you're not wrong.
Liberal.
We're just saying, from our perspective, big L
Trump is a
liberalism
liberal.
is what
If
happened
anybody out there,
when the
if
oligarchs
anybody out there
overthrew
listening
the
to this,
feudalists.
you want to chime in, give me
What's
your
that?
opinion. Todd, are you still there? Good Lord.
So yeah, no. So liberalism, I would say. So I like what Leo's doing, referencing the Statue of Liberty, because it's true that came from France, and France is where the whole capitalist revolution, the oligarch revolution against the hereditary monarchy took place, and what are those things called? So their ideology, the ideology that was able to successfully overthrow hereditary monarchy and replace it with oligarchy was liberalism. And it worked for them. It helped facilitate that revolution and that transition. And so everybody that comes from that tradition is a big L liberal, including conservatives, including Democratic voters, conservative voters. Anybody that says, I support the freedom of the individual and I resent collectivism and I oppose collectivism, those people who are anti-communist are all liberals. That's liberalism. And again, liberalism facilitates oligarchy. So it's a big L, and it encompasses, paleo conservatives. It encompasses libertarians, Democratic voters, conservative Republican voters. These are all big L liberal people. They're anti-communist, and they have these ideas that are detached from reality about democracy and freedom and about justice and equality. And this is what we're like going forward. When in reality, it's just fucking oligarchy.
But are they detached from reality?
Of course.
Look at their realities. Their realities are pretty damn good. You want to talk about the French Revolution? What was its big discovery? La Mettrie, man, the machine. And you're still living with it. You want to talk about robotics? You can go back to the French Revolution. That's where they developed. You have myriad scientific developments all around.
There was a gentleman named Karl Marx, and he went to great lengths to extol the virtues of capitalism and to extol the benefits that resulted in society from the overthrow of the hereditary monarchy feudalist system and into the capitalist system. But guess what? There's still some improvement that can happen. That improvement is overthrowing the oligarchy and replacing it with a government that actually represents the people. That's called socialism. And so that's what China was able to achieve. And that's why China is a big threat. And that's what Venezuela was able to achieve with the ballot box. And that's why we're trying to overthrow them. Like, these are just basic things that liberals don't get because their minds are detached from objective reality. But those of us who, who understand history or have a particular understanding of history, these words liberal mean a certain thing that is different from what they mean to liberals. Because again,
yeah, the thing about liberalism is that it's so entrenched, it is so permeating society, that it becomes invisible. People do not recognize ideology when they embody it, when they repeat
they think they're
it.
non-ideological.
It doesn't mean that they're non-ideological. It doesn't mean that they're not ideological. It just means the ideology that they subscribe to has become so normalized that it's become invisible. One of my favorite things that Vijay Prashad ever said, or not ever, but one of the funny things that he said, in America, we have the entire spectrum of political positions. We have feminist liberals, we have anti-feminist liberals, we have progressive liberals, we have conservative liberals, we have anti-war liberals, we have pro-war liberals. They're all liberals. That's the point. From the scientific, logical, rational understanding of the political ideology, that is the reality that we experience. Now, Carlo, that is the reason why you are able to say that Marx Sloboda is not ideological, that it's just common sense, that it's just realism. That is the only reason, is because liberalism has become invisible. Liberalism has become invisible because it's so normalized.
Flaws that they don't want to have to live under being exposed and done away with. They want to have the freedom to be human beings, because all of us are entirely different. And we all have fundamental flaws and fundamental kinks that we don't want exposed. Okay? That's what drives. That's what drove the French Revolution, ultimately. People wanted to have their individual personalities validated. Okay? They didn't want to have to live like everybody else lived.
Can we respond? Can we respond to that?
Yeah, we're all flawed. You're flawed. I'm flawed.
Can you let us speak? Can you give us permission to respond? So
no.
No.
It's the stupidest argument I've ever heard.
Well, I can hear you. So the thing is, no, I get it, and that's what liberals. That's how liberals promote liberalism, right? And so we get that, but in reality, guess what? There are things in common. For instance, we all want a government that represents the majority of working class people, and we all kind of oppose having all these policies decided in the best interest of billionaires. Like, is that something that we share? So are we really all that individual, or are there broad things that we have shared interests on? What about eating, Carlo? What about food? You think we want to starve, or do you think we want to do a plan so nobody fucking starves? Is that something we can all fucking agree on, Carlo? Are we fucking individuals? We're fucking individuals, and some of us want to starve. Shut the fuck up, Carlo.
No, you're not wrong about that. You're trying to change the subject. I'm talking about human nature. Human nature cuts what you think and what you have your own epistemology based on human nature. You don't understand anything about human nature. Obviously.
Do humans want to eat, Carlo? Do we want to fucking starve, or do we want to fucking eat?
Yes, that's fundamental. They want to eat.
Do we want a representative government that represents us, or do we want a government?
Even after they do eat, they still have the kinks. They still have their own personal nature, their own personal being.
Well, nobody's denying that.
Sounds like liberalism to me.
Despite our individual differences, our individual differences.
Human nature is liberalism. I'll take that. Can I quote you on that? I'll get a bumper sticker made. Stupid remark. stupid. It is.
It's ridiculous.
Here's what Stalin said.
Stalin.
He's like, there is no, nor should there be, irreconcilable contrast between the individual and the collective, between the interests of the individual person and the interests of the collective. There should be no such contrast, because collectivism, socialism, does not deny but combines individual interests with the interests of the collective. Socialism cannot abstract itself from individual interests. Socialist society alone can most fully satisfy these personal interests. And again, so I'm talking about basic personal interests, such as, desiring a government that is interested in furthering the interests of the working class masses, as opposed to the oppositional interests of the, 1% ownership class, or about, developing an economy that can feed everybody instead of having cyclical famines every year. So this is just basic. And so you can't resist, say, I don't agree with socialism because I'm an individual. You're just being an idiot liberal when you do that. I mean, that's my argument.
Let's go to a place where we don't want to go.
Individualism, there's nothing wrong with individualism. We all want individual freedoms. Now,
No, they don't. No, they
Yes,
don't.
we do.
These governments don't want individual freedom. What about pornography? What about it? What about, you can't have open pornography?
Carlo, you're not letting me talk. You're talking over me like a typical white man.
This is
Lecturing
an
me
absurd
on
argument you're
racism.
making.
Lecturing me on
You're trying to deny human
racism.
nature.
You-
Oh my
you
God.
keep-
What are you?
Yeah, like, are you human nature? Like, to talk over other people and
Yes, that's what I do. I've been forced to do that.
Okay, great.
I mean, do you want to address his point about pornography? I mean, I would just say that comes down to the individual societies, and certain societies have the right to, regulate these things as they see fit. And especially, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a minor, extremely minor social policy, but it's much more fruitful if we talk about the bigger structure, the bigger political, economic structure that can provide maximum individual freedom, ultimately in the long run.
Yeah, what is
not
freedom?
not in the short term, right? Now, a society where 1% owns all industry means 99% of people do not have decision-making power on how to produce, what is being produced, and who benefits. So, as long as 1% of ownership class people own all industry and controls the state, individual liberty is a joke.
Yeah. The idea that we're free, that we embrace freedom, when people don't have, access, we have limited access to quality jobs, quality healthcare, quality education.
That doesn't cancel out
Westerners, U.S. Americans fight over
out people's nature. Don't you ever go online and listen to some one of these Trump MAGA people say? You ever think about what there is going on in their skulls?
I think we're bumping up against TDS, Leo. We're bumping up against TDS.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
So, the idea of freedom. Liberalism talks about freedom like, oh, I want the freedom, to...
Most people don't want freedom.
To look at pornography. Well, what about the freedom to, have a representative government, the freedom to access health care, the freedom to have,
that's not a human that's not in the human nature. That's not in the natural being.
To want healthcare?
Thousands of years, it was set up more like a kind of Egyptian pharaoh situation. People worshipped the emperor or the king. So that's not obviously not part of human nature.
Yeah. So no, I mean, liberals often use human nature to, to support their anti-socialist, biases. But
they never use human nature. They're against pornography. They want to thwart it. They want to the largest money producing commodity in the world, and they want to go up against it. They want to go up against human nature. Now, there's reasons for pornography in the U.S. It's long been sexuality's been long been repressed, and if repressed people will, they'll express themselves. But pornography out of China thrives.
What?
Yeah, out of China it thrives. There are people of circumvented
Out of China. Oh, right. Outside of China. Not coming out of China.
Not coming out of circumvented it.
Okay, I mean, Carlos, Carlo, why don't you just do this show? I mean, what is me and Billy doing here? Like, you should just take over.
I wonder about that myself.
Yeah.
Because when I first set up this show, it wouldn't have been so limited. It wouldn't have been a stylist expression. That's not what would have occurred. It would have been much wider based, and it was. Now I lost my sponsor. I spent a year and a half in hospital, so that's it. This is what I have left. This kind of cramped notion of human nature.
Cramped,
limited, beyond repair, I think.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, it's an interesting discussion. We started talking about, the differences between, or what liberalism is really. We have different opinions about what defines liberalism and what what liberalism is. And we can have different opinions, but I think it's interesting to exchange ideas and perceptions. And so I think me and Leo have explained our perception of what liberalism is, the function that it serves in society, and who benefits from promoting this ideology. And then you have people that don't really see things that same way, right? They see things differently. Like, well, it's good that liberalism is about freedom, it promotes freedom, and I want to be free, and so I'm a liberal. And I mean that's a valid perspective. I'm not sure it's I think it kind of misses a lot. It kind of misses the perspective that we have about it. Namely the function that it serves in the class struggle and in maintaining the status quo and resisting change and trying to keep the ruling class, in charge of the resources, the governments, and the whole global system, really. But
your argument.
Okay, guys, I gotta bounce.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Good talking to you guys. Until next time.
Take care.
Okay, thanks,
Communism will win.
Gun control. Tell me about gun control. How's that liberal?
Okay, that sounds like an interesting discussion.
It's freedom.
But let me end it, and then I will see you once we stop subjecting our viewers to this. Hold on.